Welcome to Open for Business, the Gallatin Valley's only local business and consumer talk show featuring Tom Egelhoff, the Man Entrepreneur magazine radio called the leading authority in the United States for doing business in small town. Here he is, speaker, author, small business consultant, and Mrs. Egelhoff's favorite son, Tom Egelhoff.
All right, welcome everyone. Open for Business. We air every Saturday live from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Mountain Time on AM 1450 KMMS in Bozeman, 1340 KPRK in Livingston, Montana. If you'd like to be a part of the big broadcast, go to kmmsam.com and click Listen Live. The call-in number during the show, 406-522-TALK, 406-522-8255. I'm here, you're here. Let's get the show on the road. All right, thank you, Dan. Welcome back, everyone. 58 degrees outside. It's Saturday, June the 1st, 25 minutes before the top of the hour. Happy to have you along with us. I want to welcome you to the podcast portion of Open for Business. Each week, I share some tips and tricks I've learned over the years about advertising, marketing, promotion, building a strong, successful business. And I do these live every Saturday between 11:30 and noon Mountain Time, right here on AM 1450 KMMS in Bozeman, 1340 KPRK in Livingston, and streaming worldwide on the web at kmmsam.com. You can also pick us up using the smartphone app, Radio Pup. That's Radio P-U-P. And if you missed any of my previous podcasts, you'll find them all on my website at smalltownmarketing.com. That's smalltownmarketing.com. Just go about halfway down the page on the left, and you'll find a link to the podcast page so you can catch up on any of the podcasts you might have missed. Today's podcast topic is why you're losing customers. So if you've been in business for a while, I'm sure you've heard the old axiom, it takes 6 times as much to develop a new customer as it does to keep an existing ones. In most cases, this refers to advertising expense, but I think it goes way beyond that. It takes 6 times as much of everything: employee effort, building trust and confidence, overcoming negative word of mouth, and many others I'm sure you're thinking of right now. So what exactly does a business do to lose customers? As with most business topics, there's no one cut and dried answer. Now, it may be one thing or it may be a combination of things. One common overlying theme is that the business loses track of who it really is and it starts trying to be all things to all people. Successful businesses stick to the things they do best and they ignore the rest. We all hate to turn any customer away, but if you can't satisfy that person, there's no other alternative. So let's start with what the experts say. The experts claim if you want to keep customers, give them good, great, super, dynamic, overwhelming, unbelievable, unsurpassed, outstanding, incomparable, off the chart, out of this world, make them say, wow, customer service. To that, I say bunk. Is there anyone listening to this podcast that doesn't know the value of taking care of a customer? I didn't think so. Anyone want to admit that their customer service stinks? Again, I don't think so. If you're in business, you know the value of taking care of the customer. I don't have to tell you to do that. It's real easy to say, just be better. It's a lot harder to actually do that in the real world. Now, race cars have tachometers to let the driver know that the revolutions per minute of the motor are getting too high and the engine might break down. The driver needs to keep the needle out of the red zone to protect the engine, and the same is true of your service. There's a level of service that each company can safely maintain. Trying to move that service level into the red could spell disaster for your small business. So good customer service is simply the best service you can maintain consistently day in and day out and still be profitable. Now, sometimes in an emergency, you'll have to go into the red zone, but you can't stay there. Your marketing and advertising message should tell the customer the level of service you're prepared to deliver and then deliver it. Acquaint your customers with consistent service and they'll support your business. Next, let's talk about the perception of your business in the mind of the customer. Now, I've talked many times on these podcasts about the logic and emotion of why customers act the way they do. And one of my rules of advertising is that when logic and emotion come in conflict, emotion always wins. Customers make emotional decisions, then they create a logical argument to support that decision. Now, if you don't believe that, you can take me down to the local grocery store and show me the dead mouse or dead bird cat food. That's very logical to the cat. The emotional human, however, buys the turkey and gravy. So as much as we would like for them to, customers do not sit down and logically compare two businesses or products. and make a logical decision about where they want to do business. Customers will develop a perception of your business based on the information you provide in your advertising and your business appearance. So you may be perceived as low priced, high quality, convenient, or any other niche that your customer mentally creates. Customers leave when you no longer are perceived to meet their needs and desires. This commonly happens when a business tries to improve itself. You add or delete products or services, and some customers change their perception of who you are and what you provide. If you have too many sales, you become a discounter. JCPenney is experiencing this right now, and they may not be long for this world. They're just one of many traditional businesses finding itself unable to adapt to the new information age customer. So if you're in this situation, be sure there's a strong communication with your customers during this process. We all hate change. Any Facebook users out there? They change all the time. And I'll address more on communication in just a moment. But are you losing to your competitors? Every business loses customers to competitors at some point. How many customers are lost is the big question. Don't feel you have to mimic the competition. Just because they offer a particular product or service doesn't mean you have to. Do what you do best, but be aware of what your competition is doing. Check their ads. Have friends or relatives shop them from time to time and see what their message is. How do you match up against your competition in the eyes of your ideal customers? Are you both perceived as being the same, or are there differences between you? If so, how can you capitalize on those differences? And don't let pricing put you out of business. Business owners probably spend more time worrying about their pricing than any other single business issue. The major reason for this, in my opinion, is that they don't know how to connect price to value. It's especially true in new home-based or small startup businesses. They often begin by pricing themselves too low, and this is referred to as buying the business. They establish a price in the minds of consumers and find it difficult to raise them to reflect what their work is really worth. So keep in mind, pricing is nothing more than the perception of information. For example, let's say I had a sealed tin can like you'd find in a grocery store. Can has no label on it. It might be a can of corn or peas, but without a label, you don't know. So how much is it worth? You might be willing to take a chance and say, 50 cents. Now I shake the can and it's clearly empty except for something rattling around inside. Could be a coin, could be a piece of metal. Now how much is it worth? To some of you, probably nothing. To others, you might want to take a chance that there might just be something of value in that can, but it's still a risk because you don't have enough information yet. Now, suppose I tell you that there's a 1-ounce gold nugget inside the can. Now what's it worth? Well, quite a bit by current standards. The point is that each time you got information about the can, your perception of the value of the contents of the can changed. And that's all pricing is. It's creating benefits and value that outweigh the amount being asked. So what do you do if you find you're charging too little? Suppose I make a widget and I sell it for $15. If I sell 100 widgets, I make $1,500. Now suppose I find I can't sell them that low and still be profitable. I have to raise the price to at least $25 to make an acceptable profit. So if I raise the price to $25, what will happen? How many customers will I lose? Will I lose 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10? Well, at my $25 price point, if only 60 people buy my widget, I still make $1,500. I've lost 40% of my business and made the same money with less inventory and production time. Now, studies have overwhelmingly shown that only about 7% of the population are true price shoppers. Most people are value shoppers. So let's take the 7% price shoppers out of the 100. So 93 widgets at $25 comes to $2,325. That's $825 more than selling them at for less. Since the product was underpriced to begin with, most people will be able to see the value rather than the price. You won't lose customers based on price if you know how to connect value to your products or services. Now next, let's talk about your quality control. I've always felt that quality is directly related to customer service. Most mistakes happen when you're trying to deviate from the norm. So if a customer's in a rush for a product or service, and that requires speed or special handling, there's a much greater opportunity for mistakes to happen. Any reason quality suffers is usually by trying to cut costs because of the pricing issues I just talked about. The product becomes inferior. So if you cut the cost of making it to hold the price down, the product becomes inferior in the eyes of the consumer. Most businesses have checks and balances to make sure that whatever the product is, it must be of a consistent quality. Make sure you maintain some form of quality control checks. Customers expect a certain level of quality of exchange for their hard-earned dollar. So if you disappoint them too often, they will most definitely leave. So how flexible is your business? Now this part might seem to contradict the previous part, because didn't I just say that most mistakes happen when we change from our policies and become more flexible to solve problems? Well, there are times when it's beneficial to your company to do so. Your big box competitors may be locked into certain procedures that can't be changed at the local level. The critical part of customer care is to increase quality control for this special order, but not let it contaminate your normal procedures. Sometimes being flexible can uncover ways to be more efficient and find better ways of performing the task in the future. So let's get back to the communication that I was going to talk about earlier. When your business decides to take on a job for a customer, there should be no further discussion about any difficulty that job may impose on the company. For example, a local business here lost a customer simply by telling the customer how difficult it was to produce their job on time. That's not the customer's problem. That's your problem. And it creates a doubt in your abilities in the customer's mind if you want to tell them that. Any discussion about how difficult it is should be kept in-house and only addressed during the bidding or job assessment procedures. Learn from the difficulty and try to find ways to be more efficient next time. Or adjust your marketing and advertising message so it doesn't project things you can't do efficiently or profitably. Would this customer feel comfortable bringing the same job back to this company knowing the potential problems? I don't think so, and I can hardly blame them for leaving. If you make a decision to take a job, that should be the end of the story. If you don't feel you can do the job on time, then that's another story. But it's always best to be upfront and honest with the customer. They're counting on you, and trying to be more than you are can have disastrous consequences to your reputation. So I've covered a lot of ground on this topic, but this is just the tip of the iceberg, as you might imagine. There are literally thousands of reasons why your customers go elsewhere. If there's a secret to retaining them, I think it would be consistency. You can walk into a McDonald's restaurant anywhere in the country and pretty much know what to expect. You're going to get a consistent level of service, quality of food, and consistency of establishment, usually no more and no less. Now, I can't name a McDonald's where I received good, great, super dynamic, overwhelming, unbelievable, unsurpassed, outstanding, incomparable, off the chart, out of this world, make them say wow service. I get what McDonald's told me I would get. We have 2 McDonald's here in Bozeman. I don't say I'm going to drive across town to the other one because it's better. They're consistent, and you should be too. And that's the podcast. And I do these Open for Business podcasts live every Saturday between 11:30 and noon Mountain Time, right here on AM 1450 KMMS in Bozeman, 1340 KPRK in Livingston, and streaming worldwide on the web at kmmsam.com. You can also pick us up using a smartphone app, Radio Pup. And if you missed any of the previous podcasts, you'll find them all on my website at smalltownmarketing.com. That's smalltownmarketing.com. Just go about halfway down the page on the left, and you'll find a link to the podcast, so you might have catch up on any of the podcasts that you might have missed.